Yellowjackets is back this week with episode 3 of the 3rd season, and did anyone else just completely lock in during the final 10 minutes of the episode? So much happened, and I didn't expect half of what we saw to ever appear in the show. A talking alpaca? Come on. With that final sequence potentially hinting at what caused the cabin to burn down in the season 2 finale, and it seeming like Coach Ben went from being the prison guard to the prisoner. This was definitely an eventful episode for sure. Also, is Shauna getting on anybody else's last nerve? She's been so dislikable this season so far in both timelines. But anyway, let's dive into the episode and break down all that there was to take away from it. Here is Yellowjackets Season 3 Episode 3 Ending Explained. Just to let you know, this video will contain spoilers. How did the cabin fire start? The ending of this episode saw one of the weirdest montages that we've ever had in the show. These hallucinations happened because there was a gas that was within the cave that the girls were in and they were inhaling it. With Mari being released by Coach Ben during the episode, she returned back to camp and revealed to the group that Coach Ben was alive and that he held her prisoner in a cave, hence why they all ended up there. I actually feel like there was a sense of guilt in Mari's face when Ben was being held at gunpoint, because I feel like after spending time with him, maybe she realized that he was just the same as them, just as fearful, worried, and regret-ridden as what they all were. Something that came out most when they were in conversation with one another, and he broke down because he didn't know how his life had gotten to a point where he was trapped in the wilderness. She even shared the story about a family member dying, which showed that she was opening up to him, compared to her pretending to flirt with him at the start of the episode with the hopes of being released. When it came to the strange hallucinate dream, there was one scene in particular that stood out most, and it could be linked to the cabin being burned down in the season 2 finale. This was of Van inside of a cabin, and whilst she was there, an ember burst out of the pit onto the rug and ultimately caused the entirety of the cabin to burn down. I think this could be alluding to one of two things. The first is that it could be mirroring what happened in the season 2 finale, and that the cabin burned down through nobody's fault. Or it could have been the supernatural forces that caused the ember to leave the fire. But I would say, on the other hand, it could also be insinuating that it was actually Van that was responsible for the fire. This is because when you compare it to the other two visions, the one that Akilah and Shauna had, there was a sense of familiarity that was present for all of them. For example, Akilah was around animals, something which we know that she loves and has a deep connection with, and Shauna was around a young boy that appeared to be calling her mum, and we obviously know that Shauna was mourning her child. So with Van seeing the fire, I wonder if it was because she was responsible for it taking place. These are just a couple of theories on it for now, and I feel like it could have either been an accident, the supernatural forces of the wilderness could have been behind it, or Van could have deliberately done it. Van and Taissa. Whilst on the topic of Van, within the present day, we saw that when she went to the hospital appointment, the doctor said that her cancer seemed to no longer be metastasizing. This was following the waiter that was in the restaurant that herself and Ty ran away from in the previous episode having a heart attack, almost as if it was a life for a life, and he was the sacrifice that the dark forces and the wilderness wanted. So much so that it led Ty to really lean into the darkness and say, "We hear the wilderness and it hears us." Almost showing us that she was thanking the dark forces of the wilderness for taking the life of the man in order to potentially save Van. However, with their arc in the present day, we saw that the no-eyed man that was haunting her was actually from a childhood ice cream parlor commercial that she watched when she was younger. A figure that clearly scared her when she was a kid, and it lived deep within her subconscious mind. Something which I thought was a really cool touch. It brought that nightmarish childhood memory to the present day, and she didn't quite know why she recognized it. This led Ty to want to go to the parlor because she felt like it was a sign of some kind. When both Ty and Van were there, it was abandoned, but what they saw was a coyote killing a rabbit. Ty viewed this as the wilderness saying it wants more, meaning that in order for Van to be able to survive, there needs to be more sacrifices. So I feel like there's definitely going to be some more deaths on the horizon in this season of the show amongst the friend group. Natalie was at the end of season 1. What are we saying? Shauna? Maybe even Lottie? I guess we'll just have to wait to find out and see. The Hallucinate Dream. The final moments of the episode contained a bunch of hallucinations that Shauna, Akilah, and Van were experiencing after they went through the cave. At the end of the sequence, we found out that there was this gas that was causing them to have them, but I wonder if it had a role to play in them. For example, during Akilah's, we saw that there was a talking alpaca, and it mentioned to her that it was going to get what it wanted. And there was also one where the three of them were in a shared hallucination where Lottie was a teacher, and the words of all of the way to lose a person, death is the kindest, was written on the chalkboard, something which had a real sinister ring to it. Plus, Jackie was also there, and she was almost dishing out this band which was causing pain to both Van and Shauna. However, Akilah felt no pain from it whatsoever, which I thought was an interesting detail. So maybe the dark forces of the wilderness aren't after her as much as they are Shauna and Van. We also saw the no-eyed man walking through the hallway, and I'd have to imagine it's there because they all saw the commercial during that time period, and it was ingrained within their subconscious mind too. As we know, Van did see it because of those videotapes in the present day from when she was younger. Within the dream, we also saw that the wilderness took all of them after the wind was blowing and the familiar haunting sound and shrieking noise was present. Shauna by water, Van by fire, and Akilah by earth. All four elements of the earth were present in this scene, which showed that it was an omnipotent force that was inescapable. With this dream being caused by the gas in the cave, I wonder if any more of these will happen, and if the bond between Shauna, Van and Akilah will tighten up, seeing as though they all shared the same dream and experienced a similar outcome. Shauna, Lottie, Callie and Misty. Right, present day Shauna is coming across in such a selfish way, and I don't see how she can't see the way that she's acting. Granted, I stand by what she did to Lottie and throwing her out because she gave Callie the heart necklace that Jackie had, and she's almost been grooming Callie with the same attitude like what she did with Travis and Akilah in the Wilderness timeline. But the way she's treating Misty, it just doesn't seem fair. She's neglecting their friendship dramatically and accused her of cutting the brakes in her car and being the person that's messing with her head, when in reality, it feels like it's Melissa that's doing all that. Something which further supported that theory in this episode was that in the Wilderness timeline, when Shauna first saw Melissa, she said, "Stalk much?" So I feel like Melissa has definitely tracked Shauna down in the modern day. One thing that does really baffle me, and I can't quite get my head around it, is why Callie is so interested in Lottie when she literally chased her mother through the woods with a knife. That's one part of this season that I just think is a bit ridiculous, because I don't see how after witnessing all of that traumatic stuff that Callie is just happy to hang out with her. Unless she's only going along with it so she can find out more about what happened to her mother when she was younger and was held up in the wilderness, and secretly she might not like her. I think Shauna is soon going to realize that she's ostracizing herself from everybody, and when more chaos starts to unravel because her stalker won't be stowing down, I think she'll realize that all she's done is push people away. With regards to Misty, we saw that she was feeling the brunt of the abandonment and lack of friends that she had around her. She didn't even have Walter as she pushed him away during episode 2. With her going above and beyond to spend time with Shauna, okay, albeit it did seem a tad much, but with Shauna accusing her of being crazy, she went back to her home and burnt the photo of herself with her friends, showing that we're now going to see a different side to Misty moving forward. One which isn't going to have her being there for her friends a fraction of the amount that we've seen her. One thing I will say about Misty is that she's a friend that you probably don't want to get on the wrong side of, because as Shauna listed off in the car where she was factually correct about a couple of different things, Misty does know how to cause some damage, so it'll be interesting to see which direction she's going to end up going in. My review of the episode. I thought this was an episode of two halves, to be honest, in the sense where I felt like the Wilderness timeline was interesting and the montage at the end was a very stylistic approach for the show to take. One that we hadn't really seen before, but I felt like a lot of the modern day timeline just didn't really engage me that much. I definitely prefer the Wilderness timeline, and I wish we'd just spent a bit more time within that. Some of the modern day stuff just felt a little bit too much and overdramatic, and it can snap me out of the world a little bit. I would say that I thought the scene with Ben and Mari in the cave was actually one of my favourite moments in the episode. It felt really human, and when Ben started breaking down because he was simply questioning how a normal guy ended up in a situation like that, I just felt for him, because he just couldn't get his head around it. I do wonder if the incorporation of the hallucinate montage is something that's showing us that we're going to be getting more revelations in this season. It was a really interesting and creative direction for the show to go in, and whilst I wasn't a huge fan of the talking alpaca, I thought some of it was actually quite haunting, such as the no-eyed man walking down the hallway, the scenes with the band that locked around Shauna and Van, and also Van being in the cabin with all of those arms around her. I know this season has been getting a bit of criticism so far, but I'm enjoying it for sure, and I'm intrigued to see what's going to happen now that Ben is a prisoner. Will the girls end up killing him because they'll view him as a threat, or will they take his word that he didn't burn down the cabin? I guess we'll find out. So, there you have it. Yellowjackets Season 3 Episode 3 Ending Explained.